Alphabet and Meta are offering millions to Hollywood to partner on artificial intelligence. Bloomberg reporting tech companies have held discussions over licensing content in order to create better video generation software. Disney and Netflix have denied the requests. Warner Brothers Discovery is still weighing a decision. Bloomberg's Alex Webb joins us now. I love this story, Alex, because it raises this question of, with all of the artificial intelligence models, and I want to go here before we broaden in specific to this story. How much are they relying on the content generated by humans in companies that are not benefiting in any way, shape, or form economically from what the output is from the likes of ChatGPT?
The risk here is, of course, that you get a little bit of money up front, but ultimately it could come back to bite you further down the line. It could also help you in a sense if you're wanting to generate, computer special effects, VFX, essentially, with this kind of stuff. But the complexity, of course, is that, yes, there are people in a lot of these videos. How are they remunerated? Are they getting additional pay from the fact that maybe their likeness is being trained on this? Presumably that's where some of the complication lies. From the OpenAI side, this is really about how do you find the next wave of data to train your next generation of, GPT-5 or whatever it might be called. Because the estimates are that GPT-4 was trained on about 1 trillion parameters, essentially 1 trillion data points. How do you find more? That's potentially the whole internet. So they're really in a search now to find new sources of data to get to that next level. And it looks as though video is going to be a huge part of that.
I'm sorry, Alex, didn't all of Hollywood literally just go on strike over this? Didn't we have actors and writers walking out? Did we not solve parts of this already?
Crucially, yeah, the actors and the writers went out on strike, but the studios themselves are the ones negotiating this part. Now, obviously, as you said, there are two studios that seem not to be that interested in doing it. Perhaps, of course, Disney and Netflix with a slightly stronger, tech backbone, as it were, than some of the others. Perhaps they have more of those capabilities in-house. It'd be interesting to see, though, how they square that. Essentially, the deals they've signed with the unions compared to the deals that they may well sign with Silicon Valley, and it looks like a tough one to square away.
We do have OpenAI striking this deal to license news from News Corp. What do you make of that? Is that potentially a model that other companies can follow?
It certainly looks like it. I'm really interested to know what the details are of these kind of deals, because there is a view that, if you think about the media industry as a whole, where it's been in many ways, the revenue streams have really been eviscerated in terms of advertising income. The web has taken up a huge amount of that. But they haven't had many improvements on the cost side. There's a theory that then AI will improve their costs by meaning they have to employ fewer people. So it might be good news for the media industry. It's terrible news for journalists, for instance, because there may not be the need for quite as many editors. So perhaps by doing this, it won't necessarily come back to bite the likes of News Corp in the tail, because it might help them ultimately reduce their costs. That's not always worked out that way. One example that's quite useful from the past is if you think about Toys R Us, I maybe don't want to push this too far. Think about Toys R Us, and what they did is they went to Amazon, and Amazon distributed all of their toys. At a certain point, users then were going onto Amazon.com to buy toys, and the difference between Toys R Us and Amazon sort of blended away, and they were just buying toys on Amazon, and ultimately Toys R Us went under. That is the risk here, where if you are giving all of your training data to Google, and maybe there's a way you can get that back in return, it could ultimately come back to undermine your business. The details of it are going to play out in the next few years.
This is especially true because some of the big tech players have been getting into media so aggressively. This really raises the question of, A, whether they're just going to outright try to buy some of these studios, and B, just how much even more of a competitive threat are these, given the fact that essentially they're in the same game, albeit maybe coming from a different angle.
Yeah, in a sense, actually, if you're talking about this being maybe VFX or that they would be ultimately be supplying, you might then end up with the tech companies being the suppliers, but also the distributors on the other end. And in the middle, you have the Hollywood studios, if not quite producing the content, then being the sort of focal point for the content. That feels like quite an uncomfortable place to be.